Imagine a conflict that could reshape the entire Western Hemisphere. On one side, the world's lone superpower, the United States. On the other, the nation sitting on the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, Venezuela. As tensions between Washington and Caracas reach a boiling point, a third player is suddenly caught in the crossfire, Jamaica. But why Jamaica? To the casual observer, it's a small island nation world famous for its culture, tourism, and music, not a player in geopolitical warfare. Yet, because of a complex web of oil, debt, and a decades-old refinery, Jamaica has been forced to navigate a diplomatic minefield. Today, we're going deep into how the Rock became an accidental front line in a battle of giants. If you want more videos like this, please hit that like and subscribe to the channel right now. It will really help our community grow, plus you will receive notification when we release more content like this in the future. To understand the present, we have to look back at 2005. This was the era of the pink tide in Latin America, led by the charismatic and controversial Hugo Chávez. He launched PetroCaribe, an energy alliance that allowed Caribbean nations to purchase Venezuelan oil on highly preferential terms. For Jamaica, this wasn't just a trade deal, it was an economic lifeline. Under PetroCaribe, Jamaica only had to pay a portion of the oil cost up front. The rest was converted into a long-term loan with interest rates as low as 1%. This allowed the Jamaican government to divert hundreds of millions of dollars into infrastructure, social programs, and debt management. But there was a catch. Jamaica didn't just buy the oil, they became business partners with Caracas. Venezuela's state-owned oil giant, PDVSA, purchased a 49% stake in Jamaica's only oil refinery, Petrojam. At the time, it seemed like a win-win. Jamaica secured its energy future, and Venezuela gained a strategic foothold in the Caribbean. But in the world of high-stakes geopolitics, being a business partner to Washington's primary regional adversary is a dangerous position to hold. Fast forward to the late 2010s and into the early 2020s. The political climate in Venezuela shifted from cooperation to collapse and confrontation. The United States launched a maximum pressure campaign intended to topple the Maduro regime. This involved some of the most stringent financial sanctions ever seen in the hemisphere. These sanctions by the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, didn't just hit Caracas, they sent shockwaves through Kingston. Because PDVSA owned nearly half of Petrojam, the refinery itself became a sanctioned entity. Suddenly, international banks refused to process payments for Petrojam. Suppliers wouldn't sell the refinery parts or chemicals for fear of being blacklisted by the U.S. financial system. Jamaica found itself in a paradox. It owned a refinery it couldn't fully operate and had a partner it couldn't legally speak to. The crisis forced the Jamaican government into a move that was legally unprecedented. In 2019, they passed a law to forcibly reclaim Venezuela's 49% stake in Petrojam. Jamaica argued it was a matter of national security to keep the lights on and the fuel flowing. Venezuela, meanwhile, called it a hostile act and a theft of their overseas assets. This move effectively ended the honeymoon phase of Jamaica-Venezuela relations and tied Jamaica's fate even more closely to the policy decisions of the White House. But the risk isn't just about money and oil. If a hot war or a major military blockade were to break out, Jamaica's physical location becomes a double-edged sword. To the United States, the Caribbean is known as the third border. It is a critical transit point for global trade and, more importantly, a primary defense perimeter. If a conflict escalated, Jamaica's deep water ports and strategic airspace would become invaluable. For decades, the US and Jamaica have cooperated on regional maritime security. However, a war with Venezuela would take this to a different level. Would Jamaica be pressured to allow US staging grounds? Would the island be forced to close its waters to any vessel linked to the Maduro regime? Furthermore, we have to consider the great power competition. Venezuela is not alone. It has cultivated deep military and economic ties with Russia and China. If those global powers decided to use Venezuela as a base to challenge American dominance in the West, Jamaica would find itself sitting right in the middle of a modern-day Cuban Missile Crisis scenario. Finally, we must look at the bread and butter issues. War in the Caribbean would be an economic catastrophe for a nation like Jamaica. The island imports the vast majority of its consumer goods and energy. A conflict would see shipping insurance rates for the Caribbean Sea skyrocket, leading to massive inflation at the grocery store and the gas pump. Furthermore, Jamaica's tourism industry, the backbone of the economy, depends entirely on the perception of the Caribbean as a zone of peace. The moment the region is classified as a conflict zone, the cruise ships stop coming and the flights are cancelled. For Jamaica, the USA versus Venezuela conflict isn't just a news story. It is an existential threat to the Jamaican way of life. Meanwhile, the US is talking tough. They have made it clear that they are ready and willing to go to war with Venezuela, who they consider to be a narco state. Many across the world question their true motive, as Venezuela exports a very small percentage of drugs to America. Many independent observers think that their main motive is oil, as Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, and the US is the largest consumer of oil for energy production. Listen to Pete Hegseth, the head of the US Department of War, on Fox News, laying out the case against Maduro, the president of Venezuela, and why they are willing to go to war when the time comes.
The only person that should be worried is Nicolas Maduro, who's running effectively as a kingpin of a narco state, not actually elected, and indicted for $50 million by the United States. And we know he's involved in the types of drug running that has affected the American people directly. So China and other countries are going to say certain things, and that's their prerogative. What we have there in the Caribbean is a clear demonstration of military might. President Trump has shown, whether it's the southwest border, whether it's the Houthis in freedom of navigation, whether it's Midnight Hammer in Iran, that the precise application of American power can have incredible impacts and reshape dynamics around the world and in the region. So Nicolas Maduro, as he considers whether or not he wants to continue to be a narco trafficker, has some decisions to make, and that's all I'll say about that.
Jamaica is a master of soft power, often punching well above its weight in international diplomacy. But in a clash between giants, even the most skillful diplomats find their options limited. As the drumbeat of war fluctuates between Washington and Caracas, Jamaica remains in a delicate high-stakes balancing act, trying to maintain its sovereignty while being tugged by the gravity of two opposing forces. The question remains, in an era of increasing global instability, can a small island nation truly remain neutral, or has the rock already been pulled too far into the fray to ever truly step back? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is Jamaica doing enough to protect itself, or is the island at the mercy of forces beyond its control? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the geopolitics of the Caribbean. Click the video on screen now for yet another interesting Jamaican content. Catch you in the next video.